Hello, YouTubers. This is Mo Bravo's Knife Reviews, and I am Joe Bravo coming in today with a special Shiro Knife Day comparison video. I just picked up this new F3 Shiro. It is a liner lock with G10 grips and looks like a composite backspacer, a red collar on single row bearings utilizing Elmax steel, and trying to see how it compares to the F3NS, that is M390 steel, on multi-row bearings utilizing carbon fiber scales and anodized pocket clip and anodized backspacer. There's a lot of bone of contention between multi-row bearing versus single row bearing. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? There's a bone of contention between Elmax steel and between M390 steel. And then there's a bone of contention between the plastic and the carbon fiber. These are really the three main differences. You could tell the difference in the jipping on the top of the blade. So if you do like to choke up, obviously the F3NS is going to be a little bit better. Probably another one of the reasons why the cost of the F3 is less. The difference between Elmax and M390 I don't think is as great that people like to say. If you buy a SOCOM Microtech, you don't get the ability to choose what blade steel your blade comes in. It's either or. And if Microtech's going to say, hey, listen, doesn't matter, I'm going to charge you the same price, whether it's Elmax or M390, that really lends itself to believe that the difference between M390 and Elmax is negligible, that they're not going to charge you a price difference between the two. I do feel like that's the same when it comes to the Shiros. Regardless if it's M390 or Elmax, I wouldn't complain about either of those two steels. To me, there's no real difference in the comparison. More of the comparison is in the multi-row bearing system versus a single row bearing system. This is my first single row bearing system, and I will tell you, compared to the drop sheddiness that I have the Shiro F3NS tuned to, it's not that it's bad, it's just, a little tighter and less drop shuddy, which is fine because the deployment has no issues at all. It is plenty smooth. It rockets. There's plenty of thwack, like everybody knows that I appreciate. Detent might even be a little stronger on the F3, which, I really makes for that great thwack sound and makes it enjoyable to have the knife in hand and to utilize, I do have my F3 or F95 NL as a comparison. This is a frame lock variant versus the liner lock of the F3NS and the F3 variant. So the detent's a little bit more controllable by where you put your fingers. You want a little bit stronger of a detent, choke up a little bit, and it'll definitely get stronger. Which is why I really prefer the liner locks. But when it comes to the drop sheddiness and the smoothness, there's really no comparison when talking about the difference between multi-row bearing and single row bearing. Is it going to be a differentiation between utilizing and using the knife on an everyday basis? Not at all. If you wanted a Shiro user and you said, listen, I don't want to spend $1,000, I don't want to spend $1,200 on the multi-row bearing systems at M390, then go with the F3. It is a perfect knife to be a user. If I had to do anything of a knock to this knife in comparison, I do feel like it's a little difficult to get to the liner with the G10 scales. The F3NS has a little bit more of a cutout to get your thumb in there. The jimping, take it or leave it. The jimping on the F3NS is not as useful, I guess you could say, as it was on the F3R. I do like the F3R better than the F3NS. Yes, I know that the milling on the carbon fiber scale is a little bit better. It's got a different blade profile. The F3NS has a little bit more belly in it. To those differences, I would probably prefer an F3R over the F3NS, but that doesn't take away from the quality of all three of these knives. Is it worth the extra $400 for the F3NS over the F3? That's for you to decide. if you are used to drop shut knives and you don't want to have to shake, think about being a Chris Reeves knife that's broken in, don't shut, on its own, versus, even the hinderers on the triways versus the Teflon washers and the phosphor bronze washers. That triway fucking spoils you. It really does. I mean, it really, really does. Just for a comparison, here's a LHC, the ceramic bearings by Brown Knives, and I'm a sucker. I mean, if my knife doesn't do this now, I'm not happy with it, and that's fine. That's my personal preference. I probably won't hard use this knife, but if I was going to hard use either of these or any of these, I really wouldn't have any remorse about hard using this F3 and every day carrying it and not worrying about the carbon fiber or the titanium scales getting mucked up. I wouldn't have any problem with wondering or worrying if my blade steel is going to rust, and I would certainly have 95 millimeters of blade length to be able to handle anything that it could throw out. And, as I'm looking at it, I didn't notice this at first. It does look like the blade shape is different on the F3 versus the F3NS. The F3 looks like it has a little bit more towards the original F3R 95mm profile, where it doesn't have this belly in the blade. It does look like it might be a little on the thinner side, but again, it really isn't going to make that much of a difference. If you look at the differences between the crowns, this is a beefier knife, If you really wanted to get on this, I mean, shit, with that blade stock, you could probably baton with this thing. I wish I had my Bark River knife, but man, that thing is thick, and it's thick most of the way through. So again, you wanted a solid piece of steel to everyday use with a great blade, nice and sharp, that you wanted to have as an everyday carry. I don't think you're going to have any problem with the F3. If drop shuttiness is an issue for you, then step up to the plate and spend the $400 and get what you really want. Either way, any three of these knives, you are not going to have a problem with at all. I want to say thanks to Chris Miller over at Knife Joy, who just dropped a shit ton of Sluice Bowies. I was able to score one, just like everybody else, hit and refresh as many times as you can, but I got one. It's going to be on the channel coming up soon as it ships and as soon as it gets to my door. I also have a Custom Knife Factory CKF Yeti Chimera that I'm really excited about. I'm going to compare those two knives together and see how does the proverbial potential knife of the year Chimera compare to the dated, possibly design of the Sluice Bowie, something that hasn't been updated or upgraded besides the blade steel, and does it still belong in the top contender of an everyday carry knife versus all of the new knives that have come out since the Bowie had been released. With that, please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. I'm very much looking forward to our next interaction, and stay tuned to that nice video as soon as those knives do get here. Thank you. Have a good day.